When looking at the topics of taxation and appropriation, it is difficult to distinguish in which order they came, as one affects the other and one will most likely cease to be without the other. Appropriation is a sum of money allocated officially for a particular use. In the case of the executive, appropriation is, more specifically, the dispersal of Crown revenue to public entities. The amount of revenue that each entity is to receive is decided upon by the legislator. As taxation is the largest revenue for the government, majority of the funds that are allocated to public entities come from taxpayers. When contemplating this, it is therefore important that the government receive the taxes. A major factor in order to make sure the taxes are received is whether the public considers the taxes fair. In relation to the payment of taxes, the public must view that the money they are paying is justified and they are, in turn, getting benefits from it. Another role that the executive plays is ensuring that the entities are paying the required tax. An example of how taxation and appropriation work together is to look at education. The taxpayer pays the taxes to inland revenue in the form of income tax and goods and services tax. These funds are received and are processed. The IRD then passes over the revenue from taxes to the government. The Treasury then receives the revenue from the government. They create a budget plan and, along with the rules set out by the legislator, appropriate the funds to the ministries. In this example, the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education allocates funds to schools and tertiary institutes on a specific basis that is formulated. However, there are circumstances in which the formulation can be altered. One example of this is the Christchurch earthquake. The executive, along with the Ministry of Education, were able to free up some more Crown revenue and were able to give the University of Canterbury a large amount of money so they could continue to provide education services to their students. The schools and tertiary providers will then use these funds to provide education services back to the public. In theory, this could work well, but unfortunately people react differently. People within different circumstances react differently and have different opinions on how tax revenue is spent. This again brings back the fairness aspect of the taxation. Although one group of people may think it is fair and a good use of the Crown revenue to give money to the schools and tertiary institutes, a person from a different region or social background may think that there is a better use for the funds. This can create problems. If both of the people are taxpayers, then they should be entitled to a share of the benefits from the public services provided by their tax. In order to create a balanced and a fair tax, as well as a fair redistribution of the tax, the appropriation comes into play. This assures that different sectors are receiving funds and that the taxpayers are in turn receiving their full benefits. During the time that I spent looking into the responsibility and accountability of the executive, I've learned a number of things. Prior to the research and discussion with other class members, I had minimal knowledge about how members of the executive were accountable to each other and how public sectors were accountable to them. I also had minimal knowledge about the responsibility roles that the executive had involving departments and ministries. Accountability of the executive is there as a performance measure. Whilst the members have to review past and present events, the outcome of these reviews needs to be discussed and or reported to relevant people. A large part of this is being accountable to the public by reporting back the various going-ons within the executive. Not only is the executive accountable to the public, but it is also accountable to Parliament. Along with these external accountability roles, there is also accountability within the executive. Each cabinet minister is responsible for one or more government department, and that government department is accountable to the appropriate minister. Responsibility and accountability work together in the way that for the certain responsibilities that a member of the executive might have, they will be accountable to someone else, be it the executive or cabinet as a whole, or to the public in their ministry role. A responsible cabinet minister holds a specific department and is accountable for certain types of performance within that department. That minister is accountable to the rest of the ministers. The executive as a whole are responsible for keeping public entities accountable to the laws made by legislation. It is the executive to be responsible for making sure that the public entities abide by the rules, and if they break the laws, then the executive is responsible for the further action. Accountability is also a large part of the political game, with the opposition looking closely at what the current cabinet does. It can act as a political weapon. If the executive fail to perform their job correctly and keep in check and maintain what they are responsible for, the opposition can use this to their advantage. However, this can also work to the cabinet's advantage, as they are wanting to stay in power and don't want the opposition to have the opportunity to get rid of them. The executive will make sure that the goals that they have are being met. If for some reason these goals are not met, the executive will hold the people who failed to meet these goals responsible. Accountability is also largely involves maintaining a professional manner, as well as ensuring that professionalism is not lost. This involvement focuses again on the engagement the executive or the ministries have with the public. One of the aims of financial and performance accounting within the executive is to inform the public how the executive branch of government is performing. In order to achieve this aim, the executive will require a number of reports from the public sector departments. These reports include preparing a statement of financial positions. The executive will use these statements and reports to determine the performance of the departments based on the efficiency and effectiveness that is shown. Another important part that the financial and performance accounting comprises of is the creation of budget-related reports. This is one part that is often overlooked, but is crucial. The creation of budgets enables the executive and other interested parties the opportunity to see where the funds are being spent. With this knowledge, we can see if targets are being met and then evaluate the performance of the public sectors. It can determine, after comparing with their final figures, whether or not the sectors are performing efficiently and effectively. However, in saying this, there is an assumption made. This assumption is that the people that are dealing with and reading these statements are adequately trained and are knowledgeable enough to know what the produced budgets and statements mean. There are a number of criticisms that follow the budgeting. One of these is that it's difficult to link the outcome to managerial actions. Even if the outcome isn't desirable or is not what was wanted, then it is not necessarily the fault at the managerial level, and other factors could come into play that would cause this result. As well as the other roles I've talked about, the financial and performance accounting also comprises of the day-to-day dealings within the executive. The information about spending from day to day must be kept in check and kept track of. If this was not done, and over time a substantial amount of government revenue, which majority of would be taxpayer dollars, is used and not recorded, This would create a large deficit on what was returned back to the taxpayers in the form of public benefits. Also, there is no record of the spending. If there is no record of the spending, then if the government officials or taxpayers were to question as to where it has gone, there would be no record of this. They would not be able to do so, sorry. This is something that the executive focuses on. In order to gain full trust from the taxpayers, there needs to be a full transparency in the spending of taxpayer money so that they can see where it has gone. Also, there needs to be accuracy in their records surrounding the taxpayer money and accuracy in the reporting of what has happened and how the money has been spent. There are a number of criticisms about the financial and performance accounting within the executive. One of these criticisms is that there is a lack of independent assessment. In other words, it is seen that there is a lack of outside investigation to ensure that the accounting is performed correctly. That is, in a timely manner and is reliable, etc., etc. Although the Auditor General audits the reports and statements, some people still criticise it. Another criticism is that political gains are usually, if not always, brought into the discussion and reporting. As the Cabinet wants to continue to be in power, more often than not, the reporting and performance that is consequently found from this reporting is used as a political tool. It is viewed that if the reports appear to be doing well, then the executive is doing well and they are doing the correct job and should continue to be in power.